So I am pleased to be joined by Trevor Bullen, Dean of the School of Design at Dunwoody in Minneapolis. And Trevor, thank you so much for taking some time to chat today. Really appreciate it. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So, Trevor, I wonder if you could just start out by introducing yourself a little bit to the folks who may not be familiar with your role at Dunwoody. Talk a little bit about your duties
Yeah.
as Dean of the School of Design and how long you've been in this position.
So I've been in the position only 1 year. The School of Design was actually created a year ago. So prior to joining Dunwoody, I was in practice. I spent 5 years with Snow Kreilich Architects, an award-winning firm in the Twin Cities, and joined Dunwoody a year ago, just as the School of Design was being created and conceived. And so the School of Design was created to sort of leverage the sort of the synergies that existed between a couple of the different design focused programs here at Dunwoody and bring them all under one roof, because previously they were not all in under the same leadership. And
Mhm.
so that's sort of my basic role. We have three programs right now, and hopefully we'll be looking to expand in the not too distant future. We have architecture, we have interior design, and we have graphic design. And so those are the three programs that I oversee.
Okay, great. And have these been quite popular programs at Dunwoody?
They have. We have seen some growth recently across the board. I would say that right now it looks like our professional Bachelor of Architecture degree is the program that's growing the most.
Mhm.
But we've seen some solid either sort of maintaining or growing, which is particularly challenging in this particular environment right now. We're just in a bit of a demographic slump in higher ed. One is that there are fewer 18-year-olds in the world, and two, I think a few of them are thinking, hey, the traditional sort of college model is what's for me, and so there are those counteracting forces. So we feel fortunate to be in a space that is sort of maintaining, and certainly technical education has grown in popularity where folks are really understanding that value.
Sure. And how would you say your program sets itself apart from other opportunities out there?
That's a great question. I mean, I think there's something that I love that here at Dunwoody we have a sort of a tagline, "Born to Do," and so our focus really is on hands-on, practical, sort of learn by doing, right? And so we have a real focus on that aspect when it comes to design, and then we are exceptionally well connected to industry, where we regularly invite industry into the classroom, and we work really, really hard to bring the classroom to industry. And there are a couple of things that we do in that space. One is that we tend to have most of our classes end around noon, so that most of our students have internships, and that's a real focus of ours here at Dunwoody.
Great. And so what can you say about your diversity and inclusion efforts in this program?
Sure. I think it's always a little bit challenging, as a private not-for-profit, when there are public institutions that provide many similar programs to us, right? And so it's really largely us focusing on really trying to understand how can we, one, not only attract students, but two, sort of think about how to make them successful and how to make it a good return on investment. And that's something that we're also really, really focused on. So um, I would say one of the things that I'm very proud of is that our School of Design, actually, among all of the programs here at Dunwoody, our School of Design is the most diverse, both from a gender diversity as well as sort of ethnic diversity. And so, that I would love to take a lot of credit for it, but I think a lot of that comes from, I think, the nature of design, and the design fields where where there's a greater diversity of voices that are sought out, and where people feel like they have a say. Now that said, I think that there's still a lot of work to be done in those spaces. There are some pretty staggeringly low numbers of BIPOC folks in many design fields, and more than anything, there are some persistence issues where both with women in some technical fields like architecture, while we graduate as a country, graduate about 50% women. That's not what we're seeing persisting all the way through. When we start to look at the upper echelons of partners and directors of firms, those persistence issues aren't there. So we have some challenges still.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a couple of things that I can also speak to, just more generally about what it is that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So at
Sure.
Dunwoody, and this is not unique to the School of Design, but the entire college, we've initiated something called the P2C Pathways to Career Program, and that is a really sort of robust recruitment and retention program that we're directed at underrepresented groups, where these groups are given scholarships to attend, but it really extends well beyond that initial scholarship. So students in high school, when they enter the program, and we will run a session with them during the summer, where they attend for several weeks during the summer. They get paid a stipend to attend. So this is not one of those things. We realize that can often be a barrier where a young person might need to, might need that summer job to really help out. And so if they're being forced to choose between, yes, an academic program that could benefit them, but also the sort of financial burden that they might carry. So they're given a stipend to participate, and they do that in the summer. And then throughout the course of the regular school term, once a month, we meet with them, and we work with them on skills, skill building, resume building, all of those sort of soft skills and sort of academic learning skills, right? So so we provide some of that basic sort of training, a good base. And then once they join us at the college, we give them a scholarship. And then we continue with the wraparound services to make sure that they are being successful. So that's, I think, one of the big pushes that we have here at Dunwoody. There are a couple of things as well. One of the things that we noticed is that some of our students, as they were going into the later years of some of our programs, they were just kind of running out of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so last year we initiated a completion fund, a fund just targeted at students who just needed that little bit of financial help, just getting over that hump. And so that's been great. We've partnered with some of our industry organizations. So the Minnesota Architectural Foundation, for instance, has given us a number of scholarships for BIPOC students. So those are all the different ways in which we're engaging with our industry partners and also internally to find ways to connect to underrepresented groups.
Great. And how many underrepresented groups? So what's the share of your total enrollment in the College of Design? Do you know roughly what?
It's between 30 and 40%. I don't have the exact number, but
Okay.
it's in that ballpark.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. And so do you have your students come mostly from the Twin Cities metro area, or do you have draw students from
So, one of the things that we do mostly draw our in-person students from the metro area, from the sort of the around the suburbs and also from Minneapolis.
Mhm.
We have launched one online program in architecture, which we've got students as far away as South Carolina. And that is also part of that sort of equity piece. And when I say equity, I just mean accessibility, really,
Mhm.
because what we've also found is that for many of our students, they might choose to take an associate's degree, because we offer both associates and bachelor degrees, and then they get into the workplace. and they would love to continue their education. They'd love to be able to extend it and sort of move up the ranks, but life happens. And so our online programs are really providing a pathway for many people who otherwise wouldn't be able to. So those are run in the evenings, and allow students to then continue to build on their earlier successes.
Great. What would you say are the job prospects for graduates from the School of Design?
So right now, I think the economy is still holding strong. I mean, at least in terms of demand for our students. And it's also, it obviously makes me feel a little bit nervous, with a lot of talk of recession. Are we going into recession? Are we not going into recession? I think that sometimes the design fields can be pretty disproportionately impacted in an economic downturn. Design fields can often seem like a luxury in those lean times, and so that's one of our, I'm obviously keeping an eye on things like housing starts and other things to kind of gauge where things might be. And of course, there's some real localized conditions. So we're trying to hedge against those by really making sure that our students just have those skills. When I talked about earlier, these sort of hands-on skills, we're really trying to set our students up so that even in those tough times, they are the ones who are still in demand. And I think that's also one of those big differentiators between us and some of the other schools, which may have a focus that is, some might say, a little bit more, sort of got a little bit more of a liberal arts, right? Traditional college blend with the technical, where we have a sort of laser focus on those technical skills.
Okay. And what piqued your interest in design as a young person? Is it,
Yeah.
do you have role models or others in your family who were
You
in
know,
that
I
field?
I do. I mean, I have, I'm fortunate enough to come from a family of professionals, and I have an uncle who's an architect,
Mhm.
and a lot of folks sort of asked me, well, did my uncle inspire me to take up architecture? And the truth is no,
Mm,
because I think as a young person, your uncle just seems like your uncle is just not. You're sort of unimpressed by the folks that you're most familiar with. But when I was in high school, I was in love with two subjects. I loved art and I loved physics.
mm,
And I really was thinking, desperately trying to think, what am I going to do that's going to, with my life, and what sort of career? And it's my story is, I think, very similar to so many young people. I had a career day. We had a lawyer and a doctor and all these folks, and an architect came through to speak. And I think what really resonated with me was the way in which the architect spoke about his work,
mhm,
about it as a sort of as a kind of vocation, as a calling, where so many of the other folks kind of talked about it like this was just their job,
mhm,
right? Is what they did for a living. And not so much in that light of a calling. And that really resonated with me as something of wanting to have some larger ideals. And so that was sort of my introduction to it. I was fortunate enough. I went to college in New York City,
mm.
which is like an amazing lab, if you will, where I got all this exposure to not only great architecture but just so much larger culture, and that I was hooked.
Yeah, so did you grow up in the Twin Cities, and how did you end up going to school in New York?
Oh, sure. So this is it's a long story, but I'll give you the cliff notes. So I'm originally from the Caribbean. I'm an immigrant.
Okay.
And so I, I am when I immigrated, I went to New York really just to go to school. I did not
Mm,
actually intend necessarily on staying in the United States. So that's how I ended up in New York. I went there for college, and then somewhere along the line in grad school, I met my wife, who's from the Twin Cities. And as I've noticed with a lot of transplants in the Twin Cities, their spouses are the ones who sort of bring them here. And
mhm,
so yeah, I mean, it's such a great place to be in the Twin Cities, and for family reasons, we came back
mhm.
here.
Awesome. Well, we're fortunate to have you here. And
Thank you.
so, but it sounds like you have a good thing going there with the School of Design. Any other thoughts before I let you go? Just any
Well,
general
I
thought?
would say one other shameless plug
Mhm.
about our one of our programs is that we really one of the things that we've done is that we've really built the program. We call them 2+2s or 2+3s, where
Mm,
we pull students in who have an associate's degree, and we make it easy for them to come in and continue on. And I've been advocating since I've been in this role for more schools to really try to be a little bit more sympathetic. And by that, let me just explain. What ends up happening for a lot of folks is they can go to a community college. It's very accessible, it's very affordable, and they come out with their associate's degree.
mm,
Then they decide, okay, I want to go on to the next thing. The problem is that our system, for the most part, is not well set up to allow them to make that easy transition. So
mm,
the first is even if they wanted to go in person, a lot of the times what we found is a lot of folks with a 2-year degree go to their local university, and the local university goes, yeah, but we have these courses, and your courses aren't don't totally align with ours. So yeah, you've gone to school for 2 years, but really we're only going to give you credit for 1 year. And
mhm,
that's a really unfortunate consequence of this. And so they end up either discouraged or taking on more debt or having to go
mm,
longer. And we've worked really hard to kind of align our curriculum so that we can make that transfer easy.
mm.
And I think fundamentally, I hope that it's going to break down some of these barriers to allow students to really come into their own and pursue careers of their choice.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. That's very important and timely with what's going on in the news today, all the talk about student debt relief and things of that nature. So it sounds like you're doing what you can to address the affordability issue.
And it's so important, and we need to address the return on investment
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
getting people jobs, right? And I think that's the other tough thing. It's hard for young people who might come out of school and find themselves in debt, but not be able to find themselves a job, and that's why we focus so heavily on it.
great. Well, thank you again for your time, Trevor. Really enjoyed chatting with you, and hopefully we can stay in touch and visit again in the future.
Brian, thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed my time with you.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.